completely missing because they are not there to feel it. That's why this LI in particular, with regards to the speed limits and the siren, has ruffled the feathers of Ghanaians, especially Ghanaian youth, is that if you were able to fix the potholes, fix the issues, then you too would wake up like we all do and be able to get to your destination without much frustration. But if you are forced to also be in that same frustration, it might ginger you to find solutions.
Anyway, it might ginger you.
It's a confession I'm willing to make in front of the cameras that I had lost hope in this country. Yes. Why? Because for the 7 years that I was in the University of Cape Coast, young men and women who we often say are the future of our country were never interested in academic discourses like this, discourses that would advance the cause of our country. Nobody was interested. But if you brought Shatawale or Sarkodie, the halls were bursting to their seams. Quite frankly. And I felt very sad throughout my years there. We had faculty lectures at the Faculty of Arts every Tuesday. And we were literally begging students to come and listen to their professors profess knowledge. And I felt very sad. And I kept telling myself that this country didn't have a future. But quite frankly, my hope has been revived since yesterday. Quite frankly. Because when we set out, I told Kojo that he should target to bring together 200 people. And we had booked the side rooms because I'm telling you, because of what the kind of mentality that I had formed about Ghanaian people, I didn't think that we could gather more than 200 people at an important forum like that. And then he told me day before yesterday, he said, boss, we actually have 600 confirmations by telephone. I was beside myself with joy. So then I said, then this country has hope after all.
Mustafa Hamid there is now the boss at MPA. Well, joining us on the phone line 23 minutes after 9 on 3FM Sunrise is lawyer Francis Xavier Sosu. He is a member of parliament for the Madina constituency. He's also been is a private legal practitioner. Plus, he's been one of the MPs championing the private members bill. This morning, we want to do a quick analysis of the regime of private members bill. So far, how far? Honorable, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Hi, good morning, and good morning to your cherished listeners.
Great. So far, how far? Private members bill. Has it been beneficial to us since we started on that journey? What do you say?
Well, I think that the answer is a straight yes. It's a straight yes because the focal point of every member of parliament or every legislative assembly is lawmaking. And we all know that laws originally originate from the executive until the regime of private members bills that began somewhere July 2020 when the then Speaker Michael Quay, Honorable Michael Quay, ushered in 2019 when Speaker Michael Quay ushered in this regime of private members bill. And since then, we've seen a number of amendments, a number of drafting instructions that have gone through successfully. We've seen bills that have passed. If you could recall, at least I championed a number of bills. Up to about 17, 3 of them have passed successfully. 1 of them has presidential assent. And in total, at least you have 2 bills that have presidential assent. One is the road traffic rule before the one that abolished death penalty. So I would say that we have made steady progress in the regime of private members bills. In fact, unfortunately, there is some seeming tension between the executive and the legislative house when it comes to private members bill, because you know that the proper sexual family values bill, for example, has generated a lot of controversy between parliament and the executive, and also the anti-witchcraft bill which has been passed, has also not received assent yet. The other bill, Armed Forces Amendment, that actually abolished the penalty for the armed forces also is yet to receive presidential assent. So there are natural challenges in terms of the tension between the executive and parliament.
Right.
But that is expected, especially when people are generally a bit slow or very, very apprehensive of change when change is coming. So it's good that the regime of private bill has come to stay, and we just have to accept it as we move along the line.
Now, how do you feel knowing that you champion a bill? It goes through all the processes, heavily debated, additions, subtractions, and it receives a memo from, all these CSOs and interested groupings, only for it to get to the president's table and he says, I'm not sure I want to sign this. How does it feel?
Well, I think it feels a bit disappointing when that happens because I recall, for example, the anti-witchcraft bill, for example. The process actually began way back in 2020, where the then majority leader, Honorable Ofechi Mensah Bonsu, and and the minority leader, then Honorable Haruna Idrisu, began that process based on a petition from Sane Institute when Ikuya Benta was lynched. And everybody, you recall how the entire country went haywire, and everybody was like, never again. Why should somebody be killed in that manner? Why should elderly women suffer in that manner? And that led to the petition that came to Parliament. And the leadership of Parliament at the time began the process. But the process did not come to its full fruition with the 7th Parliament before that Parliament dissolved. And I had a chance to be elected into the 8th Parliament. And so naturally, being someone who finds myself around protection of rights of most vulnerable people, I decided to lead the way to revive that bill. And I recall what we call the pre-laying engagement. There were several pre-laying engagements involving even the Office of Attorney General, everybody. And we had to travel from Accra all the way to the north and live there with, I think, for a week and some few days, going to the various witch camps, meeting interest groups, chiefs, CSOs, and so on and so forth, and the persons who were alleged to be witches and so on and so forth. And they were all very dangerous expeditions, just in order to understand the issues on the ground so the bill could be properly, informed. When we came back, we received multiple memos. And so I haven't seen the process through, grueling process through committee levels and getting approvals, going through the debate on the floor, and finally having it passed and not seeing the president, signing is very, very, very disheartening and disappointing. And for me, it's more disappointing not only because he has not signed, it's more disappointing because I think it rather continues to undermine our own commitment to the vulnerable in society, because this bill was championed to respond to specific needs. Elderly women who were often being lynched on account of being accused of being witches. And so, still before the presidency, I am very hopeful that before he leaves office, he probably will reconsider his decision and sign the bill before he leaves.
Beyond this 8th Parliament, do you see a lot more members of Parliament, your colleagues, working so hard like you do, and like the likes of Roxanne, Eche Dafiamakwa, and a few others, to get private members' bill out there so it becomes entrenched in the way we do our things in this country, parliamentary speaking?
Well, I think it is going to improve because, until recently, we didn't have any procedure or rules governing even private members' bills. Now, Parliament has like Human Rights Committee. We have Private Members' Bill Committee. I even had the privilege of now serving on that committee as a ranking member. And I'm grateful to the leadership of Parliament for giving me that position and that was just announced yesterday. And I believe that this private members committee is definitely going to work on several programs and engagements on building capacity, assisting colleague members of parliament who have ideas, help shape those ideas into pieces of legislation that will respond to the needs of our society, particularly areas that may not be of a priority to government, but which may be very needful, for the movement of our society and responding to the vulnerabilities in our society. So I believe that moving forward, the regime of private members bill is just going to be better, and I'm hoping that along the line we may deepen conversation and collaboration with the executive so that the executive doesn't feel threatened when private members, dare to bring ideas that would help shape the nation.
Where do you stand in terms of private members' bill must not have a certain financial implication on the state? That small creature in there that makes things difficult, puts Helen would say a spanner in the works. Where do you stand on that position?
Well, I think that that is a misconceived position because legislative power lies in Parliament, and members of Parliament are voted to go to Parliament to identify ills and problems and challenges in our society and profess solutions to them through legislation. That's a very primary function. Now, Article 108 of the Constitution that is often cited in support of that argument never said that a bill will not have financial implications. Every bill will have some financial implications, except that there are limitations. For example, I led a bill on a reduction of taxation on sanitary pads last year, and that would definitely have financial implications. When I introduced the bill last year, towards the end of the year, the government responded by removing 50% VAT on some of the locally manufactured parts. We are still pushing that the foreign parts, also imported parts too, will need to get a similar exemption. When you read the provisions of Article 108 very carefully, for example, you can, as a private member, actually bring a bill in Parliament to reduce tax. And when you think that a tax component is too much, you actually can introduce a bill to reduce it. And that was what we were doing with the sanitary pads. So I think that what the conversations around Article 108 are very, very respectfully misconceived, and most of the time it is more of a misinformation to just maybe to water down the effect of bills that are being brought. But otherwise, every bill, will definitely have some financial implications.
Counsel, we thank you very much for your time. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Francis Xavier Sosu is the Member of Parliament for Medina constituency, and we're doing a quick analysis on private members' bill. Are you going to impress upon your MP to have a private members' bill very soon?
There are so many issues that can benefit. I think the one that Honorable Okudzewa Blakwa is embarking on now is good. I think it will bring some clarity as far as all of this sale of state lands and assets is concerned. I think that's a step in the right direction. Anything that comes to mind, I'll let my MP know.
Okay. Mr. Sami Obing is joining us. He leads a think tank, and they do some work with Parliament as well. Sami, good morning. How are you doing?
Oh, Johnny, I'm well. How are you?
I am greater than Accra. So we'll continue the questions with you. So far, how far this private members bill conversation has it been beneficial? You, executive director of the Parliamentary Network Africa, what do you think?
Oh, well, I think it has. I'm sure that in your conversation with Honorable Sosu earlier, some of the benefits have been already espoused. As you may be aware, at Parliamentary Network Africa, we have an initiative of a private members bill desk, where for the past 4 years, we've been monitoring the situation on the private members bills front and trying to document the lessons, trying to see how we support citizens, civil society, and everybody else, to engage with the process, supporting members of Parliament to better engage with the process. And our understanding from these arrangements has shown clearly that it's been beneficial. I mean, in 4 years, we've had, for example, 24 legislative drafting instructions, which means that there's been 24 ideas for private members' bills that have got into the legislative drafting unit.
Right.
And this is 4 years. We had over 30 years when not a single piece of legislation had emanated from the legislature itself. So if in 4 years we've had 24 drafting instructions, we've had 10 out of these 24 laid in Parliament and referred to appropriate committees. We've had 5 pass during the tenure of this 8th Parliament. We already had the one that passed, in the 7th Parliament, the very first private members bill that passed. It's seen a lot of improvement. Of course, of the 5 that has passed, we know the backstory that His Excellency the President has refused to sign 3 of them, and the issues are still unfolding. But if truly the legislative powers of states rest with the legislature, then there is no doubt that we must encourage a situation where members of the legislature or the legislative branch of government, gauging the mood and the situation with their constituents, should be able to, use the authority and power that rests with them to propose legislation that would help solve some of the situations that their constituents, the people of Ghana, find themselves in.
In order for us not to get some overzealous ideas of everybody trying to be in the news and trying to be popular for one reason or the other because they were able to propose, a certain bill because the floodgates have been opened, how should we get going about it? Should we take it one at a time, or should we just open for everybody to just step in?
Well, it should be open, except that there should be processes, clearly laid down processes. Yesterday, as you may be aware, we at PN Africa, we organized a forum marking 4 years of private members' bills in Parliament. And one of the recaps that we had to make was the statement made by Speaker Okoye on the floor of Parliament on 16 July 2020, when the resolution was adopted in Parliament to start admitting private members' bills, that there were 2 fundamental things that needed to be done. Number 1 was to set up the structures and systems that guide on what processes private members' bills must pass through in Parliament. And then number 2, to be able to also find out the approach towards dealing with the Public Financial Management Act's requirement for fiscal impact analysis on bills when it is emanating from a member of Parliament or from within the legislature. And these things, Parliament has started some of them. Of course, it's not foolproof. We didn't expect foolproof in 4 years. It will take time for these things to be evolving and being done better. But the most important thing is that there are systems. And so it is not every legislative idea that you have that will pass muster, right? I mean, you have to go through clearly laid out processes, which now has also been factored into the new standing orders of Parliament. So you yourself, as a member of Parliament, that some of your funny wayside ideas will certainly not pass muster. But if it is great, good legislative ideas that will transform the country and meet all of the checkbox criteria that must be dealt with, why not? We need that a lot.
Now, the issues that will be raised by members of Parliament in trying to solve some of the concerns that citizens may have, how should we go about in terms of prioritization? Because you're looking at scarce resources that are available to members of Parliament, and then you're also looking at they taking on this extra layer of work just to satisfy the prerequisite of private members' bill. How should we go about it?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's an extra layer of work. In fact, I think it goes to the heart of the reason why they are Mrashibi for. In that house, the Shemra, so that's the principal duty of a member of Parliament to be able to make laws. And so it is not, in my opinion, extra layer of work, except that it has not been prioritized in the past. And now, if we are prioritizing it, then we must give it all that is needed. Because, yes, it requires a lot of human resources to be able to do this. First of all, from the MP's research system that is available to them, to be able to develop some of these things and make sure that the idea is quite clear and we are able to identify, just like the Constitution says, what the gaps, the lacuna in the current legal system is that you are hoping to, cure, and to be able to write clearly the memorandum accompanying the bill and all of that. And then also there is a bit, and of course, in that first instance, working with the MPs on this, they have in civil society, they have in lobby groups, although we don't have the lobby system properly couched out here, but they have in various groups the opportunity to be able to work closely with them on that. But once it comes to Parliament, the Legislative Drafting Office that is expected to now put it in a legal text, also have a responsibility. We know they are understaffed, but they are doing some amazing work, and we need to do back up, for them. Hopefully they get more staffers, although we know that legislative drafters are one of those scarce breed of legal minds that exist, almost in the world over. So that's also one of the things that is worth looking at. But the lack of resources goes more to supporting the members of Parliament navigate through the various stages of the private members' bill towards the lawmaking process. If it's a minister who brings a bill or it's coming from the executive branch, there's usually an agency, a Department of State or whatever, who is a sponsor of it. And so usually they are resourceful, they provide the resources for it and what have you. In this case, you, the private member, will have to find your own partners and allies to be able to push some of these things through. And that can be very, very, very challenging. The private members who have gone through this path, and I'm happy that you spoke to the private member the member of Parliament who has had the most of these, initiatives, Honorable Sosu, and he told you about some of the challenges that he faces as an individual member of Parliament. Yesterday, it came up a lot at the forum, from which we are hoping to put together a policy brief as Parliamentary Network Africa to inform the discussions going forward, so that by the time we talk 10 years of this, 20 years of this, things will get better. So the challenges are enormous. Yes, it's a very important tool, and we must resource it. Look at the examples of some of the bills that have come up. You remember that in the past, we used to have instances where, not too long past, we used to have instances where we were recording a lot of suicide situations on university campuses.
Right.
Where students will stand on tall buildings, jump off, so many of these instances. Meanwhile, we had in our law a situation where if you have attempted suicide and you are not unsuccessful and you get, you'll be arrested, you'll be prosecuted and jailed. You were already wanting to end your life, and now you have to go through that kind of trauma. So when you are attempting suicide in this instance, you will make sure that the suicide, it must succeed, because if it doesn't, then you have a bigger problem. Instead of the country looking at ways in which we can support you so that the very underlying factors that is causing you to do this will be dealt with. Now we have a bill that has been, proposed by a private member, passed in Parliament, assented to by the President, which is, allowing for some of these things to be dealt with in a different manner. And there are many examples. Some people went to lynch Denta. Now a proposal for an anti-witchcraft, bill. Of course, the president has not signed that yet. But
and that brings me to my next question. For those of you within the civil society space, how do you take it that all this work is done and the principal of the country decides that I will not sign this? And Parliament looks on literally, because Parliament also has a way to remedy that situation with their numbers if it does become obvious that the leader of the executive doesn't want to sign. But both sides have not done anything about it. How does it feel for you?
Well, first of all, it is important to note that there could be instances where the president himself has presented a bill through his minister, and the final product that gets passed by Parliament, the president will refuse to sign. In fact, we had one recently. There was the wildlife bill. Why? Because Parliament completely turned the whole thing upside down. Very different from what the executive was envisaging. And Parliament has the power so to do. So it comes up to the president and they say, but the way you put in the thing, we are no longer interested in signing. So that can happen. And it can happen for both government-sponsored bills and private members' bills. So that needs to be established. The second point also is that in all of these examples that I just cited, you have the Attorney General and Office of Ministry of Justice playing very significant roles in it. In the case of the anti-witchcraft one, and yesterday I cited it at the forum and put it to the Deputy Attorney General who was there.
Right.
In the anti-witchcraft one, in the suicide prevention one, in the death penalty one, and all of that, you had the active participation of the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice. In fact, in Koforidua, sometime last year, the Deputy Attorney General, one of the Deputy Attorney Generals were there who made a presentation on these bills, their position on it, how to fine-tune it, and supported the committee really to clean it up. So if all of these things have happened, and then later on the president says that, no, I am not signing because I have seen constitutional-related matters in there, then the Constitution also provides the route through which this kind of anomaly can be dealt with. And I think that we must use that particular route. The first is that we were not happy with the route that His Excellency the President used, because it is our considered opinion that if you refuse to accede to a bill, you must, first of all, state the reasons why we are refusing to accede to the bill and propose the changes you want made to the current version of the bill, specifics, so the Parliament will consider it, either accept or agree, and I agree with you, or negatize it, right? President did not do that. He just wrote a letter to Parliament, read on the floor of Parliament. It's my expectation also that the Right Honourable Speaker in Parliament would also have taken some very decisive steps around the subject matter. Yes, we know that sometimes the conversations and negotiations that goes on within the parliamentary, the circles of leadership, it's not what we all get to hear about. But still, there is a need for that public-facing side for us to receive explanations on how things are going or things are not going. But I'm excited that some of these issues are already in court. Yes, and irrespective of whatever the position of people are on a subject matter, if we have areas of our law which are not too clear, we have a forum, which is the Apex Court of the Land, who has the opportunity to clarify these things for us. And for me, these things also help to improve our jurisprudence, right? And so we're expecting that these processes will take place. However, we expect also that the Apex Court of the Land will understand that these decisions have far-reaching consequences, which will transcend multiple years. And so, just like they've always done or are expected to do, their rulings would help anchor the law properly to ensure that, these things are strengthened. So I see the current arrangement as a phase in time, which will pass, but a phase that helps us to improve the system better if we are minded so to do.
Samuel Bing, we're grateful for your time. Executive Director, Parliamentary Network Africa. Thank you always for speaking to us.
My pleasure always.
That's it. So we'll pick a few calls, but first, break.